this is Ben. I'm going to complete day 13 of Wes Boss's JavaScript 30, and I'm going to create this really cool feature called slide in on control. What will happen is as the user slides down the screen and we pass an image, that image is going to slide in onto the page. And if we scroll up, we'll have a similar effect. So what's happening here in effect is I'm using JavaScript to keep track of the size of this window and how far the user has scrolled, and once I've scrolled past about 50% of this image, I'm going to add a class called active, and active is what's going to make the image display on the screen. So if we take a look at our dev tools here, you'll notice that if I grab this image, it has this class of active, and all of the images below do not have this class, so they look like this currently. They have no opacity and they've been translated off of the screen. But when I use the JavaScript to add the class of active, the opacity changes to 1, and then I translate the image onto the screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the entire window object and then add to it this event trigger called scroll, so that anytime the user scrolls, a function is going to get run. But there's a big problem with that, because since that function is getting run practically constantly, and the time it takes me to scroll to the bottom of this screen, I've ended up running this function a whole bunch of times. So I'm going to create what's called this Debounce function. And I've sort of spoiled the ending here because I'm already running it. So trust me when I say that if I didn't have Debounce running, instead of running, what was it, about 60 times, it's going to run almost 400 times. Let's screw it. Let's just go ahead and show what that looks like. And I can explain what Debounce is doing while I'm scrolling one more time. Essentially, Debounce is going to take the element that triggered the event, as well as the event itself in this big argument object, and then it's going to either run the function right away, which it'll do the first time, or it's going to run the function after a delay, which is one of the arguments I provided it, it being the Debounce function. So here you can see that without the Debounce function, I've run this function 397 times, and with the Debounce function, I ran the function about 60 or so times. So there's a lot going on with Debunction. To cover just a few points, again, I'm going to pull in the element that triggered the event. I'm going to pull in the event itself, and then I'm either going to run the argument right away or the function right away, and I'm going to supply the whatever triggered the event and the event itself, or I'm going to wait, in this case 20 milliseconds, and then run the function, again passing it whatever triggered the function and then the event itself via arguments. So what is the event actually going to do? Well, the first thing I have to do is loop over the images from the DOM. So I'm going to take images and I'm going to say for each, and then all of the magic happens inside of this big for each function here. So I'm going to move my pseudocode up a little bit so we can keep things nice and clean. And the rest of the steps do involve just a bunch of math, so hang tight with me and I'll explain what's going on. So the first thing I need to do inside of this for each function is locate the point on the page when to slide in the image. And let me pull up my little cheat sheet here because I did not memorize any of this math. So we'll say const slide in at, and these are going to be very verbose variable names. You'll see why that's effective here in the end. So window.scrollY, which is basically how much I've scrolled as the user, and then window.innerHeight, if I can spell correctly, and that is the height of the window itself, and we're going to subtract the height of the image, divided by 2. Now why divided by 2? And that's because I want to start to add that class of active about 50% through the image. So once half the image is sort of scrolled onto the page, that's when I want the image to actually display. So the second thing I need to do is locate the bottom of the image. So we'll say const image bottom is equal to image.offset top plus image.height, and that will grab the bottom of the image. So now we're going to create two Boolean expressions. One is going to determine when the image is half shown. So we'll say const is half shown, not has shown, half shown, is equal to slide in at is greater than image offset top. And again, if the arithmetic's confusing, all this is saying is the amount of image that is being exposed is greater than how much of the image is being hidden still. So the next thing I have to do is determine the image has been scrolled past, or has not been scrolled past, excuse me. This is what's going to allow the image to display when we scroll back up the page. So we'll say is not scrolled past. Yeah, we'll just say it like that. I think it's supposed to be past with a T, but I don't know. Window dot scroll y is less than the bottom of the image, so image bottom. And here's where those sort of overly semantic variables become a little bit clear. So if the image is half shown and it has not been scrolled by, so as long as both those two conditions are met, we're going to add the class of active. And that is the CSS class that changes the opacity and translates the image onto the screen. Else, image.classlist.remove. That way when we scroll past the image is removed from the screen. So let's refresh, and hopefully everything was done right here. We'll go, we need to go to the starter image. And we will scroll down. Win down is not defined. No, it's not. So where is win down? Win down inner height. That's not going to work. So let's try that. Cool, the console's not yelling at me. If we scroll down. You see, I forgot to use the debounce function. So first of all, that image does slide on and off of the screen. But I'm running this function hundreds of times, so let's go ahead and finish up by adding debounce. And the effect to the user is going to be the same, but the browser isn't going to be running this thing hundreds of times. There we go. So we'll scroll down to the bottom. The images are coming onto the screen. I'm now approaching the bottom, and I've run this function about 60 times instead of 400. So that's today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you tomorrow.